The following is a Hoop Ball presentation. Welcome to the Fantasy NBA Today podcast.
Brandon, I don't understand. I don't know if you wanted me to leap straight into the Kawhi Leonard stuff. I'm not even doing the opening to the show yet. I don't know if I fully understand why Kawhi Leonard wouldn't run it back with Toronto, but you got to be over there just like, are you nervous or excited or like a weird combination of both right now?
A weird combination of both. And I don't want to believe it until it actually happens. And I've now started to convince myself a little bit now that we're hearing from Woj that Kawhi's interest is in the Clippers and not the Lakers. By the way, anyone that thought that he was remotely close to going to the Lakers is out of their mind.
Yeah. Even I'm not that delusional. I.
Not happening. Yeah. And you've been pretty delusional the last couple of days.
Yeah.
But let's be honest here. I mean, A, they don't have the money. And B, Kawhi is not a guy that's going to go to a team to play third fiddle. That's just not who he is. Here's my thinking that's making me kind of happy and optimistic is that he already won the title in Toronto.
Right.
What does he have to prove now? He can easily get a pitch, and he's going to get this exact pitch from Jerry West and from Steve Ballmer and from Lawrence Frank saying this has been a franchise that has been a laughingstock in LA. We have now built a team that has surpassed the Lakers until this offseason where they're getting the news. You have a chance to become a Clippers legend if you bring this team to the NBA Finals. You've already done that in Toronto. We want you to do it here in Los Angeles. And we'll see if that means enough to him, because clearly what they've got in Toronto is great. However, like we've spoken about in previous podcasts, we don't know what the hell Toronto is going to look like in 1 or 2 years. They have nobody signed past next year. So you really have no idea what the team's going to look like. And the same thing for the Clippers, where they've got cap space, but you do have some youngsters who you know are going to be there.
Yeah, the way that this all makes sense in my head is for Kawhi to do this like 1-and-1 thing with Toronto and give it one more year, run it back, kind of, so to speak, and then everybody just comes off, and then maybe that's the point. But the Clippers are a 7-1 to win the championship in Vegas right now, which is nuts because you guys have Gallo and Gilgeous-Alexander and Lou and Montrez, which is fine, but that's not a championship team. That's a number built on Kawhi coming to L.A. So
yeah, it's a number built on free agency. By the way, I don't think there's a shot in hell that Kawhi does the 1-and-1. When you've had the health issues that he's had and you have a chance to secure long-term stability, you've got to take the money.
It would seem so. What was the argument for the other side? That he's like a year and a half or 2 years away from the super duper mega max, like the $40 million one? Isn't he like 1 year shy of service time or 2 years or something? This is salary cap stuff we're a fantasy podcast, for goodness sake. So we're trying our best here, people, but I think he's really close to that and not quite there. Do you know if I'm right or wrong, or is it kind of like, listen, we're fantasy again?
I don't know. I don't. But that seems super.
Stay in your lane.
You're going to sit around for a couple of years and maybe get hurt. I mean, he just saw what happened to KD and Klay in the finals. He saw it firsthand what happened to both those guys. And KD, who knows if he's the same again? And I'll be curious to see if he gets the max. I'm sure he'll get the max somewhere, whether it be with the Knicks or the Warriors. We talked about this last week. But I think you have to take the money. And if the Clippers are willing to say, hey, you're our guy, we're going to give you the max for 4 years, I think you've got to do it.
We shall see. Welcome to Fantasy NBA Today, everybody. Rumors swirling as the offseason continues. Dan Besbris, Brandon Marcus. It is also Bucks post-mortem day. We're going to have some fun here talking LA basketball teams as well, which I know is going to annoy many of you, but also please some of you as well. Brandon, noted Clippers fan. Myself, noted Lakers fan. We're both pragmatic fantasy owners, though. So, it's offseason, so that's why we're getting a little bit silly here. This show, as all shows, is brought to you by Hawaiian Isles Kona Coffee Company. HawaiianIsles.com is the website. You can get them on Amazon Prime. Everybody's doing overnight delivery these days, so you can get them Prime by tomorrow, I think. And then you can also bug them on Twitter if you have any questions about their roasts or fantasy basketball at HI Kona Coffee. Let's bang out the Bucks first, and then we can get a little weird with the Anthony Davis and free agency stuff, because there's all sorts of things to predict at this point, and I don't know, it's all reading tea leaves, but Milwaukee, easily the best team throughout the regular season, led the league in wins, steamrolling teams in the playoffs. You remember they lost it. Many people may have forgotten because it felt like decades ago. They lost that first game to Boston, and everybody thought, well, they got exposed, and then they just trounced them. But then Toronto kind of exposed the stuff that Boston did and didn't relent in that way. Still, that's a reality take, Brandon. From a fantasy standpoint, this team was loaded to the hilt last year. They had 6 guys inside the top 70. That's amazing.
They had 6 in the top 70. You had Giannis for sure, Eric Bledsoe for another, Middleton, Brook Lopez, I'm assuming.
Yep, that's right.
Okay.
This is all per game, by the way, so we're wiping out the fact that...
Was Nico top 70?
He was number 46.
No way.
Yeah. Well, once he got moved to Milwaukee, he was not a top 70 guy, but his full season was a top 70. Okay. And he got hurt almost immediately there as well. Malcolm Brogdon, you are correct, number 69. Here's bonus points, by the way. If you're not looking at the list in front of you, who do you think was the lowest ranked of those? And I'll give you a hint. It's not Brogdon at 69. The Bucks had the number 70 ranked player in 9-cat.
Well, it's not. I think Middleton, Bledsoe, and Giannis for sure up there.
It is Middleton.
Really?
Number 70 this year. A whopper of a disappointment.
He was on fire, like, in the middle part of the season. But, yeah, he struggled. There was points when he was hurt that he couldn't hit a shot. I remember that. I owned him.
Yeah, it was a rough stretch.
Yeah, and then he struggled. I think he struggled down the stretch. I didn't own him. I traded him away in a deal for Kyrie.
That was good. That was a good move. It was Giannis at 5, Brook Lopez at 32, Bledsoe at 41, Nico at 46, although, again, a lot of that damage was done pre-trade, Malcolm Brogdon at 69, and Middleton at 70. And then there is a steep drop-off, but, I mean, we're talking about 6 guys at this point that were fantasy relevant. We'll call it 5.5 because Nico basically didn't play once he was after he was traded to the Bucks. Yeah. This is an interesting team because, Brandon, they had overperformers and underperformers kind of hard in both directions. Giannis was the one guy that was kind of like, well, you basically get... Well, Bledsoe, I guess, as well. Those are sort of the two where you basically got what you paid for. Giannis was drafted, 3 to 5 range. He ended at 5. Bledsoe was drafted usually in the late 30s. He was at 41. Lopez, massive overperformer. Brogdon, when he was healthy, huge overperformance. And then Middleton... who soiled himself. And we don't really know exactly what this team is going to look like next year. And unfortunately, again, the fact that we're not cap experts may hurt us a little bit. Does the fact, Brandon, that we haven't heard anything about Chris Middleton's free agency lead you to believe he's going to come back with Milwaukee? That's the take I'm sitting on right now.
No, I think that's we're going to see what happens with the top free agents. And then we'll see where Middleton goes after that. Because the Lakers didn't make that Anthony Davis deal, and if the Knicks don't get Durant, I feel like that's such a Knicks or Lakers move to fill that void and just give Middleton a ton of money. Obviously, the Lakers won't do that anymore, I don't think. But I could see the Knicks going and getting Middleton and then getting, I don't know, some other guard. And pairing those two together and hoping they have a chance and then just really screwing themselves over for the future. But basketball-wise, it would make a lot more sense if he stayed with Milwaukee. I think they have the best chance to win right now out of the teams that he would go to. And fantasy-wise, I think it would help too, because what we're learning about Milwaukee is they're not a team that you're going to have to worry about the bench guys. Like, the starters are going to get the majority of the minutes, and the starters are going to get the majority of the production. And in this case, obviously, you know what Giannis is going to get you, and he's going to take a step forward next year. You would assume that his shot gets even better next year. And Bledsoe's only getting older. He's 29 right now, and he's signed all the way through the 2023 season. You would think Middleton would be that number 2 guy, and he's got the ability to do it. The question is, will they actually go and sign him, and how much will they sign him for?
I'm going to assume that they will. Let's operate under because it's impossible to do a breakdown of these guys if we have no clue where he's going. It's Bucks or, it's the field. And if it's the field, it's probably a good thing for Middleton because he can go.
It would be a high usage situation for sure.
Because he's not going to, I guess there's a chance he could go be a second fiddle somewhere, but he was just a second fiddle in Milwaukee. I can't imagine him going to a place where there are more offensive options than the Bucks had. They had so many.
No chance.
And he still found his way to whatever it was, like 15 shots a game. I mean, it would be hard for him to drop lower than that number somewhere else, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I like Middleton a lot next year, especially if he stays in Milwaukee, because you're going to have Giannis, Bledsoe, and Middleton. You got to assume Brook Lopez is going to leave. Some team is going to overpay for him just because of that ridiculous season he had last year. He's only getting older as well. So, yeah, I like him a lot. Also, Nico's going to be a fun free agent to see where he ends up, because that's a guy that can end up getting some minutes and getting production if he actually lands in a good spot.
Okay, so we'll have so many thoughts on these guys. We'll try to go one by one here as best we can, but I have a tendency.
Why don't we go through each guy?
Yeah, okay. You want to go top to bottom? Giannis, drafted 3-ish, ended 5-ish. This is basically what I said would happen in the offseason, because there wasn't any obvious. It was either he needs to totally fix his free throw stroke or add the 3-pointer, and I wasn't really in the camp that believed either of those things was going to happen. Somehow his field goal percent went even higher this last year to 58. That's nuts. I don't know how that goes up anymore. Is this the offseason where he starts to take a couple more threes? I mean, it feels like did Toronto do so much to this team's psyche that Giannis is going to turn himself into a 3-point shooter? From a fantasy standpoint, I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing.
I think that he knows he got exposed in that playoff matchup. Obviously, they didn't have anybody else they could rely on apart from Giannis, and Giannis realized that he couldn't get to the hoop every single time. That's why his field goal percentage was so high. I mean, I think he led the league in dunks by a large margin. So when you have dunks, that's going to help your field goal percentage. The field goal percentage, I'm fine taking a couple of percentage points off of that if you're able to add in those threes, because this is a league that relies on the three ball. I mean, it's as simple as that. And I think that he'll continue to improve his jump shot, and I'd be surprised if he's not a top 3 guy next year.
I really want him to fix his free throw stroke, and I don't know that I believe it's going to happen.
That'll come with a 3-point shot, though, you would think.
You would hope.
He's a better shooter.
I mean, his best free throw shooting game in the entire playoffs. This is the sweep of Detroit, the 5 with Boston, the 6 with Toronto. He went 4 for 5 in the blowout win over the Boston Celtics on May 8th. He didn't have another game where he shot better than 75% at the line. So pressure free throws, by all accounts, it actually seemed like he got a tiny bit worse. That series with Toronto is actually really different if he makes all of his free throws. They lost a game by 6 in Toronto where he went 2 for 7. I mean, if that's a 1-point game at the very end, that's pretty different. He missed, he missed 5 free throws in a game they lost by 6 at home to Toronto. He missed 5 free throws in a game they lost by 6 on the road in Toronto. I would rather he stand at the free throw line the entire offseason and do nothing else. I don't think that's what's going to happen, but that would be my perfect world, because if he could shoot 80% at the foul line, that gets him into the top 2, I would think, in fantasy, because then you don't have the one thing that's kind of a drag, because he's a bad free throw, not DeAndre Jordan, Andre Drummond in their worst case is bad, but a pretty bad free throw shooter, and then the volume is what killed you. He's taken 10 a game and hitting 72.5% of them. I don't believe that is going to make the big leap. So I think Giannis is going to stay in that 4 or 5 range next year for fantasy.
Where would you want that percentage to go to be happy?
79.
Okay. Well, what's interesting about Giannis is that he's actually regressed in several categories over the last couple of years. If you look at his free throw percentage, in 2016-17, he was 77%. The next year, 76%. And then last year, 72.9. You look at blocks, 1.9 2 years ago, 1.4 last year, and then this current year, or I guess 2 years, whatever. You're going to go 1.9, 1.4, and then 1.5. And then steals, 1.6, 1.5, 1.3 most recently. So some of these numbers are actually going down, which is interesting to see. His assist numbers have gone up, and his rebound numbers have gone up, and obviously his points have gone up. But to your credit with a three-point shooting, he was at 27.2, then 30.7, and then 25.6 last year. So he took more of them, and his percentage went down. So that'll be interesting because his best percentage was when he took the fewest between the last 3 years, and that was when he had 1.9 attempts, and that was in the 2017-18 season when he shot 30.7 from three.
Yeah, I'm not certain he's ever going to be a great three-point shooter, and he can still be an all-world NBA guy without it. We're almost talking about the same thing two different ways. The way that the Bucks get past Toronto is him making his foul shots or punishing them for sagging off of him on D. He went right into the teeth of them and got fouled a lot in that series, but it didn't really hurt Toronto the way it could if he was hitting 80 to 85% of those things.
Yeah, I think field goal percentage is definitely important, but I'd also like to see the other numbers get back to the highs that they were at. I'd like to see his steal numbers get back to 1.5, and his blocks get near 2. I mean, there's no reason why he can't be near 2 blocks a game. Absolutely no reason. He's bigger than every single player he's defending.
Yeah, he's a freak. It's insanity. I will point out one interesting little footnote. This last year, he actually played the fewest minutes per game since his sophomore year.
I was just looking at that as well.
So they kept him a little fresher, and that reminded me of Mitch Hedberg joke. But on top of the minutes reduction, you pointed out that his rebounds, his assists, and his points actually went up. So his per 36s in rebounds, assists, and points went way up because the actual numbers went up and his minutes went down by 4. His minutes dropped by like 10% this year. That was a big deal.
It's weird. And so if you assume that his minutes can somehow get back to 34, 35, then you're getting back to the highs of everything.
Man, he really is an easy guy to own. But you do need to get somebody who can hit free throws to go along with it. That's a tough... It's I don't know. You know how I feel about I'm a roto guy, so someone that can sag your number he's unbelievable head-to-head player because on any given week he might just have a good free throw shooting week. So who the heck cares? He's not going to punish you in that category all season long. But oh boy, I mean he took like 700 free throws last year and missed like 200 of them. That's a big knock. And so I feel very comfortable taking him at 5 or 6. I don't feel comfortable taking him in the top 3 where he always ends up going in 8 or 9 cat.
You're not getting him. If you're not getting him in the top 3, you're probably not getting him.
No, and I'm okay with that. Hey, unrelated question, then we're going to go to Brooke Lopez. How high would you take Steph Curry next year?
That's an interesing question because his usage is going to be super
stratospheric. It's going to be insanity.
Who's the number 1 player for you next year?
Probably Harden.
Is it?
Yeah, he's so tough. I don't know why he plays through everything, but he does.
So if they trade CP3, which I'm not sure that'll actually happen.
No, who's going to take a $40 million contract on that guy?
The Lakers.
No, they will not. Well, they can't get him anyway. They don't have the cap or the assets.
Yeah, it's true.
Unless they send Anthony Davis to the Rockets.
Could trade Kuzma.
Yeah, Kuz and his $2.5 million salary or whatever he's making. They could trade him to Hassan. Maybe the Heat will dump Hassan Whiteside and like Ryan Anderson's contract. There's your $40 million right there.
Didn't Whiteside just say he's going to opt in? It's like, no kidding.
Yeah, you think? Yeah. Do I have to announce this out loud? Can we just can we just roll along? Steph could be number 2 next year, couldn't he? Or maybe AD?
I don't know if I would take AD too. See, it's interesting because then you wonder. You get Giannis. I think it really does depend on what you're playing. Like you said, the roto makes a lot of sense that he hurts your free throw percentage. But I'd be fine taking Giannis number 2 and head-to-head. I think it's really who you want to own. I think it really is that simple. Because I think they're going to all end up pretty close to each other. I think the top of the draft is the easiest to figure out, barring injury. You know what you're going to get from Steph, Harden, AD, Giannis. I mean, it just seems that simple with those top guys, and even guys like Joker. So I'm fine with any of them. But yeah, I'd be fine with taking Steph number 2. Yeah. The question is, does he get exhausted and then get hurt?
Maybe.
That's the question.
Probably. Maybe, probably. They're gonna have to play though to get into the playoffs in the West. They're gonna be probably somewhere in that 5 to 8 seed range, I would think, with Steph and Dre. And then they're gonna get really good if Klay Thompson comes back in March.
I think they're really a 6 seed with just Steph and Dre.
I think they're a playoff team. Yeah, I think they're getting in.
Yeah, competitive Western Conference.
I know, but Steph and Dre are so freaking good. It's easy to forget. I mean, they couldn't beat the Raptors, but.
Who else is scoring besides Steph? Who else is scoring?
It almost doesn't matter. They'll get somebody in there.
It does, though. You got to average 110 points in the West.
They'll get there.
Okay.
They'll get there.
I'm sure they will. And to your point, I liked your tweets with Chris Andrews, I believe his name, beating the book.
Oh, my God, Gil. Yeah, Gil.
Gil, there you go. There's so many different guys there in Vegas. Yeah, the 14-1 is stupid. I mean, back then, you have no point. I mean, you have no reason not to take that as a flyer. Just because they're so well run as an organization, you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, get a couple of guys to fill out the roster, get Klay back, sneak into the playoffs, and then, I mean, when they had Klay, Dre, and Steph together, they were basically tied with the Raptors, who won the championship. So they're tied for the best team in the league without KD. Let's not forget that. Okay, back to the Bucks. Sorry, I got waylaid there. There's going to be some fun discussions at the top of the fantasy draft next year. We haven't even done Brook Lopez yet. You're right, though. I think he goes somewhere else. He can make more than he did this last year. He made $3.4 million this season and just was freaking brilliant. I mean, he was the perfect fit for that team. 2.2 blocks, 2.3 three-pointers, half a steal. He somehow did it on 45% shooting. He basically only took three-pointers last season and shot 45% from the field. 84% foul shooter at the big man spot. You can't get that type of combo. He's like getting Kristaps Porzingis at an insane discount with lower scoring. Someone's going to give him some money, and I hope that it's a team that needs a center that can space the floor, because if you want him to do that amazing Brook Lopez slow motion move down the lane, which, by the way, is one of the greatest things to watch in the NBA, that's just not his optimal fit anymore. But what an awesome year. He was drafted in like the 70s, 80s, and he finished at 32.
Yeah, the Bucks need a guy like him. So it's very possible they re-sign him. I don't know if they can money-wise and how much he's going to ask for, but you need a guy that's not going to clog the paint for when Giannis is running towards the basket, and that's exactly what he did. But he's a good fantasy player. So, I mean, if we want to chat about him, it's tough to really predict where he's going to go and how valuable he's going to be, because I think it really does depend on the situation. If he's going to be a guy that is not able to stretch the floor as much as he was able to with Milwaukee, then I don't love it. He'll probably be overdrafted. But if he's in a situation with a power forward that is going to bang down low and he's going to be stretching the floor, they're going to go to him as a scorer, then I like it.
I really need to know, and I'll do a little work on this here after we get off the podcast, what the Bucks could offer him versus what other teams can offer him, or whether or not it might even be the same thing. I'm going to guess he's looking for like a $10 million a year, maybe 20 for 2, something like that. That feels like a very reachable number for him, right?
Yeah. You want to hear something funny?
Always.
Last season was his career low in points per game.
And yet it felt like it was probably his most efficient and most useful fantasy season, or most useful reality.
Weird?
Yeah. Which, by the way, that boggles my mind that that's lower than his season with the Lakers, because they didn't even play him for the first 3.5 months. And then, you remember what happened with that? I watch all the Laker games, so if these things are a little fresher in my mind. Brook Lopez basically didn't play November, December, January, and then they went to Brooklyn, and there was that Brook Lopez tribute night, and all of a sudden they started using him, and he was just amazing for the last 2 months of the year in L.A., then he went to Milwaukee. I can't believe that those last 2 months in Los Angeles had to be what floated his points above this last year, because that was 13 and then down to 12.5.
Right, and then what's most eye-catching is that it was also his career high in free throw percentage, 84.2, following a year in which he shot 70.3. And then if you look at his 2-point percentage, he was at 61.3 instead of 54.9, and then 3-point percentage 36.5, which was his highest so far.
Yeah, he was not a happy camper in the Luke Walton Lakers era, and he was not alone because Julius Randle also didn't get to play the first half of that last season. They may have been pre-tanking a little bit that year, but although it didn't make any sense for them to do so, they didn't have their draft pick. That was not a well-run season of Lakers basketball. This most recent one, you can go higher into the front office for the real dumpster fire, but 2 years ago, it was the coaches, man. I don't know what the hell they were doing with the players' minutes on the floor. That was bonkers. So Brook Lopez, obviously, it's going to depend heavily on where he ends up. But the thing with a guy like Brook, too, is, he got way overdrafted his year in L.A. because, we rightfully thought they were going to play him. Idiots. And then this last season, he got way underdrafted because of what happened in Los Angeles. Maybe this is the year it finally settles. The scales of justice finally settle into some sort of midpoint. I think he played 28 and a half minutes a game this year with Milwaukee, which is pretty high for a man of his size and in this modern NBA. I don't know that we can expect him to get 29 minutes per game at some other destination. So I'd be looking for more of like a top 50 finish for him this coming year, and I think I'd feel pretty comfortable with him as my number 2 center.
Yeah, I think it depends where he does land and how many minutes he's going to play. Like in this situation, he had his career high in blocks as well. So all these other numbers he had career highs in, except for points per game. And that's a Dan Besbris special whenever you have somebody that score a lot but does everything else. And that's exactly what he did. So, he played 81 games. He started all 81.
It's amazing.
He's pretty durable for the most part. He's played over 70 games in the last 5 years. So it's a guy that I like, and he's going to be on the floor, and he's going to shoot the three, and he's going to have some games where he is awful, and he ends up getting you 5 points to go with 5 rebounds. But then he'll come back the next game and he'll hit 6 threes, and he'll end up having 23 points to 8 rebounds.
And 4 blocks, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So you just don't know with him, and I think he's better for roto leagues than he is for head-to-head.
Yeah.
Because head-to-head, I think he can hurt you in a given week.
Yeah, because there's just not enough of the popcorn stuff on a night-to-night basis. Come on, Lakers, if you're going to overpay for anyone that's not a max free agent, bring the Lopez back.
Boy.
It's a huge mistake. Even Magic, in all of his ranting and raving and blaming everybody, he did say, my biggest mistake was not re-signing Brook Lopez. So, at least he got that one right. Eric Bledsoe at 41. He is a very predictable fantasy asset. Great field goal percent from a guard, not great free throw percent. Points, rebounds, assists, steals, couple of threes. Any reason to think this is going to change?
No. He's a solid player. He hasn't really been affected by injury much, which is good. Except for, you look at maybe the 2016-2017 season, he played 66 games.
Well, Phoenix did that weird, All-Star break is over. See you later, Bledsoe. You can go hang out in your barbershop chair.
Yeah, he seems to be healthy for the most part. And he's making threes. He's been averaging 1.5 or so for the last 6 years.
He's very consistent.
Free throw percentage is actually his worst, so you are very much okay if you say he's probably going to shoot closer to 79% this year. I think that he's a better free throw shooter than what he showed. And 5.5 assists, 1.5 steals. He's going to get you some blocks from a point guard, which are very nice to see. And he gets you points. So as simple as that. He's a guy that you can just set and forget.
Easy. That's nice to have one of those guys every once in a while. Niko Mirotic. They already have Ersan Ilyasova on the team. Do they want Ersan Ilyasova version 2.0 as well? It feels kind of redundant, and if they re-sign him, I think they can. That would push them into some pretty serious financial issues. I'm thinking he probably goes and looks for 2 or 3 year deal for 30, something like 3 years for 30, 3 for 33, something like that. I would be surprised actually to see him back in Milwaukee, but maybe I'm wrong. I'd love to see him somewhere else because Lord knows he's a hoop ball guy, and he was amazing in New Orleans before the trade this year.
Yeah, he's a guy that I'll be curious to see if he chooses winning or money in a bad situation. I think that'll be the most interesting thing to see Because what were to happen if Philadelphia didn't keep Harris and Butler, which most likely they're not going to keep both, and then you have him go into that number 4 spot?
Ooh.
Because he's going to stretch the floor, not clog the paint for Embiid. Embiid showed that he's not a guy that should be shooting threes for the entire game. He's better off down low. Then what if you bring in a guy like Nico and he's starting for Philly, and he's also being spread out where he's not playing with those guys all the time? That could be a nice landing spot.
That's a nice fit. I don't know anything about whether or not they can afford all these guys, but if Nico lands in a good spot, we saw it last year. He put up like top 30 numbers with New Orleans. It won't get that high in a place like Philly, but he could very easily be a top 50 guy because he's a good rebounder. He falls into steals and blocks somehow, and then he's going to knock down a whole bunch of three-pointers. Again, kind of a big guy that doesn't kill you anywhere. Not a great field goal percent guy because a lot of his stuff is from the perimeter, but he was around a steal and a block a game in New Orleans pre-trade. So this one, again, very much a where will he end up guy because I don't think he's back with Milwaukee, but maybe I get that one wrong. Malcolm Brogdon, they got to bring him back, right? He's their low-usage, high-efficiency guy in that spot. He was a perfect fit for that team.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if he doesn't end up as a Buck next year. It would just make too much sense to keep him.
Look at his percentages.
Yeah, he continues to improve. Field goal percentage of 50.5 for a guard is absurd. A free throw percentage of 92.8. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, I think he made like his first 52 or something. Just some crazy number.
He's improved all 3 years, which shows you a lot, which shows you he's a player that's willing to work at his craft and continue to get better. And that's something you want to see. His points went up. His rebounds went up. His minutes didn't even go up from the previous year. So clearly he's a guy that is someone on the rise, and you wouldn't be surprised if he ends up getting more usage at some point, and he ends up at about 20 points per game. He's very capable of doing that.
They might. I hate to knock Chris Middleton in this way, but he's a guy that, in looking at sort of the advanced stuff, he actually flourishes more as an ISO player than as the guy around Giannis, whereas Malcolm Brogdon is kind of more the I'm better when I'm around this massive gravity player at the 4 spot. So the only things you're not going to get from Brogdon, he's not going to get you any defensive stats. That's just not his game, and that's been trending down. But, I mean, steals are everywhere in fantasy these days. So, if you have a guard that doesn't get you a ton of steals, you just go find someone that gets you a few more. And if you need to round that out late in the draft, that's available as well. The percentages with him is what I think is just absolutely amazing. I mean, if you get your starting point guard in fantasy that's shooting over 50% from the field and 93 at the free throw line, that's an incredible boon. It opens up the ability to get a big man who's not a big-time field goal percentage guy, someone like a Brook Lopez who blocks shots without positively impacting your field goal percent. You can be good at free throw percent. There's just so much wiggle room that having a high percentage guard gives you on your fantasy team. And I know we're talking about this, the number 69 guy like he's a top 20 asset. I don't think he's going to get drafted that high next year because his game isn't flashy.
No, 100%. And he's a guy that could easily end up top 40. I mean, without a doubt, I'm telling you, if they don't keep Middleton, someone's got to get that production. And you have to think that Brogdon will be part of it. If he can stay healthy, which that's the big key, because now in back-to-back seasons, he's failed to play more than 64 games, and he hasn't played more than 75, then you will end up getting a stud. And that's the issue with why he's going to slip in drafts is probably his health.
Yeah, I suppose that's a possibility. I'd take a shot on him.
Oh, 100%. 100%. Because if he's healthy, then you're in really good shape. And I know you and I talked about you want to get guys who are going to be on the floor, blah, blah, blah. But if you have a guy that you're going to be able to draft in the, 7th or 8th round, and you're going to get a guy that's going to be top 40 when he's on the court, I'm fine with that.
He's a little older than most guys in their 4th year. He'll be turning 27 in December of this season, so very early in it, which I guess is a little bit of a knock on him in terms of how much better he can get. But yeah, I mean, he's such a nice fit. He fits on all fantasy rosters at this point. And finally, Chris Middleton, who thought he'd be the last one of these guys we're talking about, drafted in the late 20s, finished at 70, could not throw a stone in the freaking ocean for about 3 months this year, and it just crushed him because his field goal percent was about 2 to 3 below what I think most people expected. His free throw percent was well below his career mark as well. He just didn't really look comfortable this season in the Coach Bud offense. I mean, his steals were down, his blocks were down, his rebounds and assists were up in this odd twist. I don't know that his outlook gets better if he stays in Milwaukee, although certainly, the run for the championship, that would be a pretty good reason for him to stick around. If he wants to go make a ton of money and make a bigger name for himself, it's probably somewhere else, but if he wants his best chance to win, he stays here and has to adapt his game a little bit. I am not that confident in a massive Chris Middleton bounce back. I'm fairly confident in a tiny bounce back. So I'm thinking more, top 50, top 55, as opposed to the top 30 we were all gunning for. Where do you stand on Middleton if he stays in Milwaukee?
If he stays in Milwaukee, I think more of the same because of their offense. It relies on a lot of threes, a quick offense revolving around Giannis. They're asking Middleton to space the floor. But if he goes somewhere where he's a max guy and he's someone that's going to be relied upon, I wouldn't be surprised to see him approach his 2017-18 numbers, where he averaged 20 points, and he ended up shooting pretty well, 46.6, which is his second highest of his career, and he had his second highest three-point attempts. I think he just needs to be smart about when he takes his threes and how many threes he takes. I like him. He obviously has the fantasy-friendly game if he can stay healthy and can make his shots. I think that obviously is the key. But when you shoot 88% from a forward spot, it's pretty good.
All right, let's play a little very quick game at the end of the show today, and then we'll wrap things up. It's as of this weird bleeping moment in pre-draft, pre-agency NBA universe, where do we think guys are ending up? I think we did this last week, and now we're another week into weird rumors. I'll go first, so you don't feel like I'm putting you on the spot on this one. I think Kawhi Leonard is going to be a Clipper next year. I know you probably don't even want to say it out loud because you're worried then it won't come true. I think the Lakers, with all this stuff going on Twitter of everybody like, they didn't even know that they had to wait until July 30th to execute the trade and that Anthony Davis has a trade kicker, and they didn't know. It's funny to make fun of the Lakers front office because they have done some pretty stupid stuff, but I do think that they knew, and I also think they have something up their sleeve. So I think Kemba Walker is a Laker next year.
And with who else? That's the interesting part. If Kemba goes into that spot, do they have any money except for the mid-level exception and the veteran minimum?
Yeah, I think the mid-level is what they'd have left at that point. Listen, you probably saw me tweeting it yesterday. I'd be totally fine if they shirked that way and went Pat Beverly at point guard, give him $10 million to play point guard with that group. He'd be an amazing fit. Just dogged offense. Give Beverly $10 million and give Danny Green $8 million to go keep defenders in front of them on the perimeter, and suddenly the Kuzma, LeBron 3 and 4 spot feel a little bit safer. I do think they find a way to get a Kemba. I think they think their fan base. I think they believe that their fan base won't be satisfied unless there's a third guy. So they're going to do something crazy to make it happen, even if it might not be the best 1 year plan. It is probably better for getting guys to stick around down the line. I think Jimmy Butler leaves Philadelphia, but I cannot for the life of me figure out where he goes. And I think they retain Tobias Harris. I thought he was a better fit around all those other guys that are moving towards the interior, and Jimmy Butler's not.
I think the opposite. I think they keep Jimmy, and Tobias is the one that leaves.
Yeah, you might be right.
Yeah.
All right, what do you think about the other guys I've said so far? You're not going to speak on Kawhi. We do not speak his name.
I hope Kawhi is a Clipper. I think it really does come down to the Clippers or the Raptors. I don't think there's anybody else in that race. I'd be surprised if he takes even any meetings with anybody else. It really should just be those two teams.
Kevin Durant. I totally forgot.
Durant's going to be a Knick.
I think so, too.
I think that's still going to be in play. It's more likely now that he stays with the Warriors because of this injury, and Joe Lacob goes, you know what, let's just pay him. Let's pay Clay. Let's pay Durant, and just, you know what, we love KD. Let's just go ahead and pay him. But something interesting that I heard that I didn't realize is that Jay Williams apparently went off on the Warriors' handling of KD. And Jay Williams is a guy that actually hangs with KD. So that's kind of interesting because it makes you think that maybe they mishandled KD and KD thinks that. So yeah, I think KD's going to the Knicks. It's a no-lose situation for New York. If he is not the guy that he was supposed to be, then you know what? You shot your shot. But you need to make a splash, and you're not going to be good next year, and you might as well go after him. So I think KD's going to be a Knick.
I agree.
Kemba's the interesting one. I don't think he's a Laker. The interesting thing is that the Lakers haven't shown me that they're capable of knowing what to do with that money. After last offseason, where they just went and were a complete disaster, there's no reason to think that they won't be a disaster this offseason. However, if they're not, then clearly it was Magic that was the problem, and not Pelinka. Because if Magic is the one that was behind the Stevenson and the Rondo and the McGee and all those guys, I know you liked some of those guys.
Yeah, I was okay
by the way,
with
not
McGee.
Sure how you can bring Rondo back. I saw you tweet about that.
Ugh.
After his antics when he was sitting on the bench or sitting down with the fans during the game. I'm not sure how you can bring that back. Not a great locker room
Please
guy.
don't. Please don't. I'd be okay with McGee coming back, though.
Yeah, as a backup center, that's fine.
Right.
Yeah, as a backup center, that's fine. But they haven't shown anybody. They haven't shown they're able to know what they're doing.
They should
wouldn't
just
be
read
surprised.
Twitter. I feel like the Lakers should just get some intern to just sit there and read Lakers Twitter and see if
That would
anybody
be
comes
so
up with
fun.
good ideas.
Oh, that'd be so funny because Twitter does know a lot of good things. Some people are stupid, but some actually know what they're talking about. I think Kemba stays with Charlotte.
It's a lot of money. Yeah, it's a big money bump. But good Lord, that team's going to be stuck in mediocrity for like another 3 years before they can do anything.
I don't think he cares.
Yeah, I guess money is money. But
Yeah.
what's the okay? This is a question that neither one of us can answer. But really, what's the difference between like $150 million and $200 million? If you invest that money, fine. You're never going to know the difference the rest of your life.
I'll turn that to you in an even smaller landscape. What's the difference between AD not taking that $4 million trade kicker and him taking the $4 million trade kicker?
I think optics for him. That's the only thing of just like, hey, welcome to LA. Keep your $4 million. All we want is for you to sign a massive long-term extension. I think the Lakers don't want to take anything.
It hurts them big time.
Yeah, it does. But I think that they can't ask him to waive it. He would have to come to them and do it, or LeBron would have to like say something, because all the Lakers want to do is make sure he's as happy as possible. And the last thing you want to do to your new toy is to go ask him to give something up.
Yeah. By the way, I wouldn't be surprised if Justin Holiday ends up a Laker.
Justin Holiday. Oh yeah, of course.
Comes back to where he played his high school ball near Campbell Hall. I think that would make a lot of sense.
That's actually not a terrible fit, and you could probably get him on a pretty cheap contract.
Yeah, because Aaron's going to stay in Indiana, because you would assume that he would take over some guard stuff if Collison leaves. I don't know what his situation is.
By the way, Collison would not be a terrible guy for the Lakers to look at also.
Yeah, him as well, although he's a UCLA guy. And then Drew Holiday's going to stay in New Orleans.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the Holidays, just in terms of guys who have played here, whether it be UCLA or Campbell Hall, something like that, it would make a lot of sense for a Holiday to come back.
Lakers need to sign guys that can hit three-pointers and keep their offensive player roughly in front of them. That's
Correct.
all they need to focus on at this
And
point.
Holiday fits that mold.
Yes, he does. Let's put a pin in this bad boy until next week. Brandon, that was fun. Things are only going to get weirder as we close in on free agency.
You know what's funny is that I actually went to Woj's Twitter today, and I do this with a couple of people, and I sign up for the notifications every single time they tweet. It becomes a text. And then I realized the draft is on Thursday, and he's going to be tweeting every single pick.
Yeah, you did it too soon.
I canceled that.
You got to wait until the weekend, and then you can
I
turn
was
it
like,
back up.
let's wait till after the draft, and then I'll sign up for the text every single tweet thing.
Yeah, I don't want to know who people are drafting. You know how I feel about rookies.
Yeah. Oh, boy, Zion's going to be good, though.
I'm very grumpy. Yeah, he's the one I know.
Zion's going to be good.
At BD Marcus on Twitter. I'm at Dan Besbris. This is Fantasy NBA Today. I'm done for the week, but the show is not. Neil, back tomorrow with the Warriors. Adrian and Coach wrap up the post-morta season on Friday with the Toronto Raptors, and then we move into, briefly, because I don't know anything about it, draft coverage, and then free agency. And I will have an announcement, by the way, related to free agency next week on the podcast. Yeah, I know. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be fun. I don't think I've even told you yet.
You haven't.
I know. I was working on something behind. I have told no one yet, by the way. I know this secret, and Brew, because I was like, Aaron, do you care if I do this? And he was like, yeah, you do whatever the hell you want. And so that's where we are with this secret. So that's coming next week. Enjoy the rest of this one. Who the hell knows? Something might happen. I'm actually going out of town for 2 days, so don't bother me.
Enjoy Vegas.
Thank you. Yes, I will likely be ordering a lot of room service and possibly just sleeping. This is called Responsibility Escape Tour 2019, because the kiddo stays in L.A. and the parents go catch up on the rest that they lost for the year.
Go ahead and put a future bet on the Nuggets for me.
You want me to put some on all Jokic?
Yeah, what happens if Tobias Harris goes to the Nuggets?
Can they? They'd have to. Well, Paul Millsap would have to go, right?
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. All right. Well, you let me know how much you want me to do. I'll walk into that sports book with confidence.
Yes.
I will strut like Marc Gasol. I will
Ooh.
strut like Marc Gasol. Ha ha ha. So long, everybody.
This has been a Hoop Ball presentation.